Spoiler season for A Lawless Time is heating up with over 150 cards released, 14 leaders, a lot of very powerful legendaries, and some cool draft chaff as well. With this fresh, clean slate post-rotation, we need new decks to talk about. We don't know what the meta is going to be. We're trying to figure it out, and in the process of doing that, we have 3 semi-new decks, some old leaders making a return to the program tonight as we try to get you prepped for A Lawless Time. I'm Jordan from the Colorado Cantina Crew, joined by Kyle and Sharkey. Kyle, welcome in. How you doing?
Hey, yeah, I'm good. Doing good, man. I hope you're doing well. It's a busy weekend, this last weekend, I think, with kind of outside of Swoo stuff going on,
Sure.
But excited to be here.
Sharkey?
Yeah, I'm running into the same busy weekend this weekend, busy weekend coming up, but doesn't mean we don't have some time to start tinkering with some of these decks, so it'll be a good time.
Yeah, totally. And as one good thing ends, another good thing begins. The NFL season ends. Spoiler season gets more attention. The NBA All-Star break is almost here. The NHL is on the Olympic break. We have curling. We have good gold medals. Hopefully we'll get you some gold here tonight. So last week we spoke about 3 new decks. If you missed it, it's up on the channel. We spoke about Jin, we spoke about Krennic, and we spoke about Jabba. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a new spin on existing leaders. Tonight, we'll be talking about all leaders from 2 from Legends of the Force, 1 from Secrets of Power, and we're going to try to see if we could find some magic prior to this set. After that, we're going to debut our new branded segment, the Cantina Q&A, as we hit our mailbag, in which you could ask us questions in our Discord server. Links in the description. We're having a great time hanging out in there. So a lot of stuff going on. We're going to try to get in and out like we're known to do in about an hour or so. We'll see what happens, but we have 3 decks to talk about. And Sharkey, let's just lead it off with you. And that's with Dryden Red coming in. And to be honest, this was one I was a little bit surprised to see make an appearance this early in the season, because as we've been talking about Dryden, a lot of times you just automatically go to blue, don't you, Kyle?
Yeah, with Dryden in the past, it's definitely been blue, like you said. I'm used to seeing like Dan on our team playing like a concept where you're really trying to throw away some big units early, like maybe even like a Luke, or in the previous like a Bo-Katan, this sort of thing. This is how you're enabling the ambush. You're turning on Anakin with that throwaway ability, and then you're trying to really bring in, stuff from different aspects, different flavors, and you get really interesting with what you're doing there. Green is not one I'd considered before, but I think that's the whole point of rotation here. Is some of these leaders that we're going to start to play with, we're going to see new takes on how to use them effectively. I think we're going to see some leaders kind of switch out of colors they've historically been in, like Tarkin Town type decks, and this really opens the door to what new tools did we get and what new color pairings do they work best with. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Sharkey cooked up here.
Yeah. And that Dryden build had a lot of the blues. I'm sure we'll talk about as we get deeper into the off season and stuff, but like the ambush Talzin's assassin and the force build has been like, the signature move of that deck, as well as, turning on Anakin. But Kyle, last week on the pod, we spoke about our general feelings for like what A Lawless Time is, how it's making us feel. And one word that you used was revitalized, and that we're kind of looking at things from this fresh perspective. Hasn't yet arrived, but we're thinking about it, and it's different and it's invigorating, right? So I think that's what this sort of build is, where it's like, yeah, we have been talking about this blue build that actually hasn't really been that good, right? It's been there, it's been on the peripheries, but it hasn't been dominant in any way. And now we have a red build to look at. So Sharky, let's dive in, take it away.
Yep. So as you've mentioned, I mean, I've built Dryden Blue and I've built Dryden Yellow as well, and I like both. One of the reasons I picked red this time is because there's some interesting build around cards that include in red that I happen to like, and especially since Energy Conversion Lab is no longer a thing, the only real way to get these guys to ambush is through Dryden. And those 2 cards in particular for me are the new red-green Maul and 000. Both of them are very strong cards, and 000 can actually make it so you're controlling a lot of the early board in the first place, so you can get to your late game with Maul, Nihilus, and Bendu and all that. But there's some other interesting things that come along with red in the first place. Excuse me. So like the Dryden unit is actually a pretty good example of a time when you might use his double up to take something out, let him just sit there for a little bit. And then honestly, this deck probably should also include aggressive negotiations as a a finisher for later if I had thought about it ahead of time. But like you can find a way to buff him as a red unit and have him be some of a finisher. Generally speaking, the idea with this deck is not to play a unit on turn 1. It's not impossible, but you're ideally going to just pass turn 1 and play a 3-drop, with ambush on turn 2. And then if it's Dengar and you kill the one thing they have and he survives, you then ramp because you get a credit for killing their strongest unit. And then if it's 000, he's a 4/4 that can do an extra damage. That's really good too. And if worst case scenario, you go space and you throw the missile platform into the bin and it's suddenly doing an extra 3 damage when it also assaults something. So there's a lot of interesting early game tactics there that kind of change up how you have to play the deck. As you move into the late game, we no longer have Palp's Return. Like that was a card that used to enable Dryden pretty much across the board. So you have to find new ways of getting there. And one of the things I like to see with this is like Turbo Laser Salvo has uses, but it's not always going to be, you're not a Piet deck. You're not going to rely on it, but it is something that can be useful later, or you can pitch it early to use as a, an ambush enabler. The other option to look at here is salvage. So if you have to pitch Fulminatrix first, later on, you can bring it back by salvaging it from the discard pile. Yeah, those are the thoughts that have gone a lot of through my brain while making this. Now, this is probably a bit on the unrefined side. Finding the balance between 6+ cost and early game is still a work in progress. This thing has not been tuned too much yet. There's a few ideas here that I'm sure will work, and a few that I'll look at, like, why did I even include this? But that's the gist of what this one can potentially be.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me about this deck was Maul right away. When we saw that new Maul card, you go, this card is real good, awesome. But he's real good with ambush, and so how am I going to get him ambushed? I lost Timely, I lost ECL, right? One of the things I first looked at was maybe Jabba, but that actually doesn't work. You can't take 2 actions, so no Jabba, right? So that leaves us with Dryden, this is a way to enable just such a powerful unit. I mean, that thing just can take over a game if you can get that ambush going on, right? But then I like the idea that we're going into the red triangles, right? Your top end is you're hitting Maul, but then you're going straight to triangles and kind of pivoting, as you say, to like a Turbo Laser Salvo because we don't have Overwhelming Barrage anymore, right? So yeah, I can see a very powerful end game happen here. Part of the challenge is going to keep your hand full and effective to live until that turn.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think the mention of top end is really interesting and important here because traditionally the biggest top end, right, overall has been in blue-green in some form or fashion, right? As we get into this new blank slate that we're talking about, who knows if that's the case, right? Like red, I think, has a really, really strong argument, especially when you could enable an ambush with Bendu, right? Obviously, Bendu is a little slow, right? On attack, deal 3 damage to every unit on the board. When you're playing an 8-cost unit, you want it to do something. And you want to do something very quickly, right?
Yep.
Or like restrict your opponent from doing something, some sort of instant impact. But with Dryden, that aspect of pace is drastically reduced. You have Fulminatrix. I think it's called the Prescriptor. Is that the new one? The new triangle?
The new triangle's name
Persecutor.
is Persecutor.
Persecutor, yeah. So then you have that, and then you have a unit like Dark Nihilus that can continuously grow. We'll be talking about Dark Nihilus in one of the decks that I'm talking about tonight. A little teaser for later. I do think that the early game is a little bit challenging here, but I think that with some tuning, it could probably withstand a lot of that. One of the things that I would be concerned about with this deck is that the ground aggro I don't see being as big of an issue, but space aggro, I'm a little bit concerned with how this can deal with those sorts of threats. Green red, especially in villainy, hasn't necessarily ever really been like the most defensive of colors in space. If you're playing Boba in the past, you had the Ruthless Raiders, you had some things that could kind of gunk it up there a little bit. But now really the best space unit we have to start is probably the Strike Ship. Right. And that's has its own issues. Maybe you're playing like Eager Escort Fighter in the side, trying to slow things down from there. But that's a concern I would have here.
Yep, I agree. It's on the list of things I was thinking about that need to be tuned, but what to cut for it without any data is one of those I just don't have it. But Eager Escort Fighter is an easily adjustable missing piece here that I think would be a good include as well.
Yeah.
Let's call it war. can also kind of help against some of those because you're bringing it from the side, and since your turn 1 is effectively claim anyway, you just keep doing that strategy and nuke 2 things. But sometimes you can still get too far behind on the 4 or 5 resource turn against like a Han pilot. That is definitely still a thing that could be a problem. I haven't had to solve it yet, but that doesn't mean that it won't be an issue for this deck.
Yeah, I think let's call it war. I wouldn't be surprised to see that being in the 50 sooner rather than later, right?
It might end up being main deck
threats.
I like wedging in the Drengir spawn. I'm not sure that card's any good, but with ambush, maybe. And I think it's fun to try. I mean, I imagine that's probably a card that doesn't make the final cut, but it's cool to play around with right now.
That is definitely cut number 1 if I had to make one right now, but also I want to try it anyway and see if I can get it to work.
So I guess one question I would have here is why not Red Devastator?
That's another swap you can make. In this case, I chose Fulminatrix specifically just in case you do get to ambush it. It gets an on attack and when played, whereas Devastator is just when played. Now, it may end up being the Devastator is just better for the meta. That's an adjustment that can be made, but I don't think you want to go so heavy. I think 6 triangles is probably enough. If you need a 7th, you throw Devastator in. That part's a bit on the tuning side, but Fulminatrix was chosen because of when played and on attack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels like you could sideboard there too and kind of go back and forth depending on what game you're playing.
Yeah.
So I guess my last big question here would be, and it's a glaring one. This is, a green-red villainy deck that a month ago, without question, would have at least resupply in it, and probably would have resupply and super laser tech. We're not running the resupply carrier. We have a 7-drop leader. Have you thought about any of the new ramp, whether it's the 3/3 that you went undefeated, or credits, or anything along those lines?
So yes, thought about it. The issue I think with at least the ambushing 3/3s, it really doesn't get you much. So you're burning a card to throw 3 damage into something in your ramp, sure. But the leader flip is less impactful from a strictly get the leader on the field standpoint. So it could end up being important. However, I do think that you have enough up the curve here to make it still work to get you to that leader flip that you probably don't need to sell out all the extra cards to ramp to be there immediately. That being said, that may be wrong and it may be something to adjust. But ramp was consciously left out of this version just to see if you can get there. And if you can get there, then I do think like resupply carrier is fine. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. The 3/3 unit is fine, but for the cost, it's not great. It's not bad. It's somewhere in the range of being fine. But I'd rather play something else for the same cost in almost every case because those units are better. And if you can like ambush the Cruel Commandos, I'd rather do that than ambush the I don't even remember the guy's name. Mercenary, the ramp guy.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's Mercenary something. Somebody in the comments will let us know. The 3/3 on defeat can resource, put into a resource. Okay, so from there, I guess my thoughts would be, what makes this so much more interesting to you than blue? I know we'll probably mess with blue coming up here, but obviously, when you're comparing, the direct comparison is blue. So what drew you to this first?
BT1 and 000 along with Maul. Like those are the 3 cards that jumped out at me as like I want to play those guys, and I've been wanting to put Dryden together anyway for a while, but those are the 3 build arounds with Dryden that I wanted to go through for this one. And then let's call it war popped up in my on my scrolling. I'm like, all right, let's try it and see what we got.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I just traded for a Dryden showcase, so here's hoping.
Yeah, I just bought one too.
He has a nice nice early start to the next season. Any other notes here you guys want to hit on before we move on?
Another option I had real quick to talk about is Darth Vader. If you are not going to go the space route, he's an easy 6-drop pitch to start throwing units on the board. And if you do get to play him, he's a 7/7 that comes out ambushing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, the ambush really does turn on a lot of these differences in what you can do, right? Like your perspective has to change almost. Like things that were too slow no longer are because they get to ambush, which, surprise, surprise, is a really good thing. All right, so the next deck we're going to talk about here is Talzin Red Force. This is for me. This deck I've been playing quite a bit over the past week or so. Obviously played a lot of Talzin going back to post Worlds and that set of Legends of the Force. Didn't really play it much last set. If anything, I probably played more Talzin Yellow last set than this. There's been a couple things that really stood out to me with this deck that brought me here. And the first thing that really brought me here was that I think Condemn is just going to be so good in this upcoming meta. And that realization happened to me actually when I was playing a Qui-Gon build that we've been working on. And I was like, wow, if they put this on my Qui-Gon leader, I have like virtually nothing I can do about it. And it brought me on this path of what's the best Condemn deck right now. And I think it might be Talzin here. Obviously has a lot of other upsides as well, not just being good at playing Condemn. But I'm really into the deck. I think that the addition of Cad Bane really does help a lot as a plot option, especially keeping your hand alive if you're playing Marin and stuff like that. I think you have some great upgrades that you could play on the offensive side as well with the Constructed Saber and Sudden Ferocity. Maul's Lightsaber also an option. I've been messing around as you see it in the side there. I think Mando, the new Mandalorian unit's a really nice kind of swap out for Kiadi. If you're thinking about it from a card draw perspective, it's basically the same, right? Where you're just not drawing that many cards, but one is better than zero, right? And you're not using the Force. He's a shielded unit. Really like the top end as well with Devastator and Lawmaker. We'll work on the names as
Law Triangle.
Yeah, Law Triangle. But kind of like a little bit of a mini Snoke going on. Where you get to pick an aspect and do some minuses. Best 4-drops in the game, I think, in this deck. Whether it's Talzin's Assassin, Churret, or Darth Tyrannus, I think that trio of 4-drops is pretty hard to beat. Unfortunately, though, the 3-drops aren't as good, right? You have Grand Inquisitor. I'm running Marin right now, and then the Supremacy Tie. Wish that could be better. Hopefully we'll get something in the next couple of weeks as a little bit of a preview. But overall, I've really been liking the deck. It has a really good removal suite with Shatterpoint, No Glory, and the Tree Remembers. A lot of really good cards up and down the curve, and I've been having a lot of fun playing it.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we were prepping for this pod, you said you were going to talk Talzin, and I thought for sure you meant Talzin Yellow because I really like Talzin Yellow, and then you popped up the deck list. It was Talzin Red, and I was like, "What am I looking at?" So. I do like this deck. Yeah, this deck is much more late game focused than the yellow version I've been playing. So if you go watch Midday Matchup last week, we played Talzin Yellow, and it's a much more aggressive deck. You got like Shin Hati in that 3-drop that you're talking about.
Oh, man.
We're playing less removal. We're playing less top end. We're not doing triangles. Whereas this deck, you're definitely trying to control more. So it makes a lot more sense that Condemn is going to be a powerful card here, right? In yellow, I want you dead. In this deck, you're trying to get to some of that bigger stuff. So Condemn's one of those tools that's going to help you bridge your way there. So you're obviously running more removal as well. This is a very interesting take on how the Talzin Red is going to evolve as it lost some tools. I mean, the primary reason I would have gone red before was Force Lightning, right? Sure. You just see, you're like, it's the best Force Lightning deck. I'm going to run red. But now that you've lost Force Lightning, the question I asked myself was, well, is red the color anymore, right? Kind of like we talked about at the beginning of the pod. It kind of opens the window to what is the best aspect pairing with existing leaders. And for me, my path took me straight to yellow. But red obviously is still going to be very powerful. I think when I started building, that was before the Mandalorian was previewed too, and he's obviously going to add to this build.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to maybe 2 months ago, we did like a little mini Talzin Yellow deck here that I think I built, right?
Last set, yeah.
It was like Vader and Anakin style. So I really like Talzin Yellow as well. Going back to like our Swoo Year's resolutions, all of us are kind of universally high on Talzin. I'll probably mess with yellow as well. I would argue that Condemn's probably good in yellow also, right? Just has a nice little tempo play, and but I've just been loving Condemn in another conversation. But yeah, I think I hear you on the Force Lightning. I hear you on the Force Throw for sure. But it's just it's a new day, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was yesterday. It's today, right? There's this like popular clip that always pops up in my TikTok and Instagram reels. And it's about like this boat crew that gets stranded on an island. I don't know why this just popped up into my head, but the janitor of the boat is like the best hunter, the best fisher, knows how to make fires, right? And the captain's not happy about how people are like respecting the janitor more than the captain in the situation because she's feeding everybody. And the lady was like, hey, yesterday is not today. Today is today. On the boat, I'm janitor. On beach, I'm captain. And everything kind of changes in the degree of what we need to do. Like there is no rivals fall coming in to make it so we miss Force Lightning even more, right? I think that that lack of comparison to super strong things is an interesting way to think about what this new thing is going to be. Like, for sure, is sudden ferocity as good as Fallen Saber? No, right? Fallen Saber might be like the absolute best upgrade in villain that we've seen in the whole game, right? But does Constructed Saber do a nice little cosplay? Maybe, right? I think it's a complete reframing, right, of what is and what could be.
I think the reframing is a good way to look at it too. And I know, at least there's a few things I noticed about this deck. Number one, it's got the patented Jordan 90 card sideboard. Oh, yeah. Number two, though, is I think that Condemn is going to be my Power of the Dark Side going forward. Where you hate the card, but you recognize that it's actually a pretty well-designed card. Like it's got ways to play around it. It's a pain in the ass, but it's also one of those, like, if you're running blue villainy, frankly, it's going to be hard to justify not including it. Mm-hmm. I think it's a very, very good card. And I think it actually works really well with Talzin in general as well. You were talking earlier about how you actually weren't all that impressed with your 3-drops. And I'm like, I think your 3-drops are Condemn, Constructed Lightsaber, and Sudden Ferocity, but the units you mentioned are also still pretty decent units. But yeah, the Talzin didn't really lose the core for strength, which is the 4-drop slot for this color combo at the very least, and I think Talzin in general is very good in the 4-drop slot. And you just added Shatterpoint. Well, I guess you brought Shatterpoint back now that it's relevant again, and the Tree of Remembers is also another good, interesting add there. I also like the inclusion of red here because of aggressive negotiations, and you have enough plot cards to make it so that card is relevant throughout multiple paths to the 5 or 6 resource turn as well. Yeah. So I think with it, you might even end up going a little more plot heavy, so you can set up an aggressive negotiations on resource 6 with something bigger to finish a game. I think this thing has the ability to switch to be more aggressive even than it looks now. It's a little deceptive, but it's also got some late game punch to it. I think this one's a really cool one.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot too, Sharkey. I've probably built like 4 or 5 versions of this. One other call out is that I think I want to be playing red in these early portions of the season, just to be able to pop upgrades. Right, we'll see if other stuff gets printed. But I like being able to condemn and then not get condemned, right? But one thing that I thought about was like the traditional Kiadi Anakin build. And in there, I think I would definitely have aggressive negotiations, right? I think that would fit really well. In my testing so far, I'll bet limited. I've noticed that in some of the grindier matchups, I could get a little bit outvalued as we get later and later into the game. Okay. Where like they're dropping these huge units and I have like big units, but it's not quite the same. So I think a little extra pace in those situations is probably for the best. And then I've also thought about when I was playing this deck in Legends of the Force, even with Force Lightning and Force Throw, one of the things that was concerning was these like heavy pilot decks and you just not really having the right timing to take it out or this, that, or the other. So the Tree Remembers is something there that I think is really just, Chewy insurance, for lack of a better term.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I see the Tree Remembers probably as a sideboard card for those situations more than a main deck card.
Could be.
But, we'll figure out where those things go.
That's just tuning.
Yeah. Again, I just want to keep going back to this. It'll be interesting to see kind of how we figure out what aspects pair the best. Sure. And so, we haven't even talked about a Talzin Green, but I know, Sharkey, that's something you've talked about in the past too, right?
I've been working on that too, right? Yeah. So it's not as like developed as this, but I think there's some cool stuff, right? Like Doigan Master's a really interesting engine to keep that card advantage up. And
I think A Lawless Time also adds a lot to that color pairing thought now that you have the multi-aspect stuff too. So it's going to be, while this may be where we're starting, there's a lot of exploration left to do.
Totally. And I think just Talzin's going to be one of those super strong things that you have to test with, right? So Agreed. Like the yellow build is probably like I guess outside of Dryden, the deck that I would look to for the most ambush potential, right?
Yeah, and that's what you're talking about with yellow is, hey, Vader's a very powerful card with ambush, kind of like we talked about with that new ball. Well, what's the best leader for that? It's probably a Force leader so that you can get She and Flurry and get Vader going. So, of course, in my build, that's what we're doing, right?
Yep.
So, it's, how do we enable some of these powerful strategies when we've lost some of the existing tools? Really taking away Tarkin Town and ECL with rotation breaks some existing well-known good strategies, even for cards that aren't rotating,
100%, right? And I think there's just a lot of natural synergies that Talzin has, whether it's red, yellow, or otherwise, right? Like the Darth Nihilus ability where it could damage your own unit if you're not careful, right? But then you have stuff like no disintegrations to make sure it's not going to be your unit. Talzin's ability. In my initial build, I had knowledge and defense main deck over the Tree Remembers, Kyle. So to your point about it not being a card in the 50 or 60, and like that was a card that was great when I was really relying on Nihilus. I had 3 Nihiluses at one point, and Anakin in the build. That was when Kiadi was around. And then I decided, hey, like what if we try this Lawbringer, this Law Triangle, as Sharkey said, the acute triangle of the law. And right, it might be us, Austin. Let us know in the comments below. But yeah, I think a lot of interesting stuff to be messed around with here. And Old Faithful constructed on a Secretive Sage turn 2, set 5/5 Shielded Sentinel. Sign me up, right? I guess for me, the card that I'm the most impressed by that I wasn't like fully expecting to love here is the CAD unit. I think I thought, well, I'd rather plot out a Sudden Ferocity and play a 2-drop or something like that. And what I found is just the pace and the tempo of being able to do that with CAD is just great.
I think the flexibility that goes along with it is also good. You have the option to go on Ferocity plus 2-drop, or you have the option of shrinking something, playing CAD, killing it, and getting a unit on the board. Like, I think having both of those paths available to you on flip is a really good thing.
Totally agree. Anything else here before we move on to Obi Vergence Temple?
No, I don't think so. Strong deck. I mean, obviously we got to look at these leaders that we know are strong, will continue to be strong.
That's really what we're doing here too, right? With Obi 25 here. I think just to start things off, Kyle, decks are gonna have to have an answer for the counselor. Or what do you call it? What was how did you phrase it on Midday Magic the other day?
I kept saying counselor, and it was driving the nerds there nuts. So then I had to double
that's
down.
A word. I don't think that's a word.
Yeah. Well, to your point, so the first thing you're going to notice about this deck is it's 25 HP, which can be a detriment, right? You can get got with 25. So the question is, why are we playing with the 25 base? Well, it's because we lost some good Force units in early plays, and we just want to be able to play the good stuff early, but still get the Force to enable the deck, right? And by the good stuff, I mean like Mina, some of these things that I want to be playing Cinta, Maz, non-Force units early, but still be guaranteed the Force. But the main, the nut draw in this deck is the Counselor, right? Turn 1, especially if you're going first, you play the Counselor. At the end of the turn, through Vergence Temple, you get the Force, which means turn 2, you can use the Counselor. It's a way to do this without being Avar, right? And so, a lot of the challenges you've had in the past with the Counselor is, you get the Counselor, but then you can't use it turn 2. You got to attack with him. Then you want to try to use it the next turn, and he's definitely dead by then, so it's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So in this deck, you can use him right away. The nut draw is Counselor turn 1 into turn 2. I found Lando. I really thought it was going to be Queen. But actually, cheating out Queen, don't get me wrong, on turn 2 at 3 resources, really good. But people can just trade into at least one of the spies right away, and then potentially kill another one because I started with a weak unit on turn 1 with the Counselor. What's really good is Lando because he's doing his Chirrut impression. Now he's protecting the Counselor. He's very hard to deal with, and that's enabling me to continue to abuse the Counselor into oblivion, right? It's just kind of game over from there if you can't handle it. And so that's kind of the cheese win. I mean, you can go real fast and get people that way. But this deck outside of that is just a good deck running the good stuff, right? Yeah. You start with like a Gunji into a Maz. You can trade up. You can win right away. You can do things with like the new Cinta. Obi-Wan enables turning her on. Makes her very good. She's just kind of better Obi-Wan in a number of ways. You got a lot of good sentinels to hold down the ground until you can get to your really good high end at the end, right? Between Kelleran, Yoda being completely insane when you can use him every turn, and even Bo-Katan, we got a wedge in there. So this deck only has a few new cards, but it's a lot of just the good stuff. One thing I'll touch on before we get your guys' opinions here, though, is how do we deal with upgrades? I think we need to be prepared for upgrades. We're not playing red. I might need to be bringing in maybe some capture or something in from the sideboard. If I'm relying on my single target removal like Shatterpoint, it might already be too late if I've been getting slammed, turn 1, turn 2. So we'll see where that goes. That's why I like Moral Authority. We've played with it in the past.
Love moral. We're big Moral Authority guys here on the channel. I guess
I like that too.
I played this deck a handful of times. The line that I really think is great, Kyle, is the Councilor into Lando followed by Ezra, because then you're just healing Lando or the Councilor or whatever. That's what we're gonna call it from now on, and everything's it's really kind of flowing there. There is one glaring thing about this deck that I have some issues with, and I've experienced it in the testing so far. And I think I could just really chalk it up to, man, I miss Bright Hope. I think this deck is going to be a little weak to space. Obviously, Blue Leader, great card, great option, but is it enough?
It's a good question.
Go ahead, Sharkey.
I would say it's a good question. The other option there is in the sideboard, you put in the Eager Escort Fighter.
Fair.
I don't know that saves you, but it is another. And I see you've got, I don't remember the name of the X-Wing that just kind of gets in the way, but
the defense fleet.
Yeah. Has that been enough? Actually, I haven't had a chance to play with this one in the new context.
I like it. That and the Ghost I've enjoyed. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, this was a nod to Jordan. He keeps bringing this up, so I wanted to try it. I'm not sure I'm convinced on it. It is nice that you can buff it with Obi, make it a little bit bigger of a speed bump to go through. I think I want to try to maybe go more of the capture route. I've got Blue Leader, which is probably one of the best answers there is. But beyond that, Moral Authority is particularly good here because we got a lot of big butt units that Obi can make even bigger. Yeah. But maybe one of the sideboard cards I'll also look at will be Charged with Corruption. We've got a lot of green, so I can definitely get it off pretty frequently. And so maybe I'm less trying to interact or put speed bumps in space and more doing my thing on ground and then just either single target removing or capturing your stuff from space. Yeah. That doesn't really work against Vader, though, right? When he's just spewing out tiny units and I'm trying to do 1-for-1 answers, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think it depends because you can also grab the big answer or the big threat that he has and bash him with Moral Authority, which is an extra 2 damage anyway. So you do have options there that I think can make this thing dangerous. And one of the things I think that this deck gained, while it doesn't have a ton of new cards, it has a ton of new space. And I mean that in the meta game, and I don't mean that in the literal arena, because the things that were holding this back previously are just leaders that did it better. Sure. And I don't know that that's really a thing going forward. Obi's one of the other ones I'm looking at. Like, he's going to be very strong. Now, I was personally targeting yellow, but like this is another good looking start to it, particularly because you can go into Consular, like you said. That was the main play. I accidentally brought like the deck that answers that today because of my 4 power ambushers that I can get out of Dryden. But like outside of that, how are you going to knock that guy out before he puts down even just playing Typho 1 turn ahead of time?
Yeah. I mean, you have to be doing something unfair to be able to kill him, pretty much. Or like you have the play and you play Chopper or a Toon Frynock or something like that. I've liked Clan Ordo and Padme, for instance, being able to disclose, get that extra ping in. I think like the biggest question this deck is going to have to answer is how the hell do you deal with a hauler? And I think capture might be the answer. I think the X-Wing probably isn't an answer to that because it's just gonna, at least with Blue Leader, it survives 2 hits, right? So just thinking about stuff like that.
I do like Shatterpoint and Protect the Pod there though for that because you can buff everything up to a 5 button. Say, all right, do it.
Yeah, be able to shoot it down from the sky. The Ghost is good in this deck. I've been playing with it a little bit because you can buff it now. It has Sentinel, right? So it's a bigger speed bump you can throw up there. One of the other things you could try to do is the race from the ground. I've got 1 figure of Unity in there. Maybe if I'm going space versus ground, I bring in another from the sideboard. It's a way to just, now all my stuff's juiced up with Restore. I think I could win this race. It's always tough to race with the 25 HP base, though.
Here's Yaddle, here's Mina, here's this, here's that, right?
It's still a lot of restore, though,
It's definitely a possible path. I think this might be one of the decks where True Remembers is a main deck card. Right, because like if you get Falcon Chewie or this or like, you know, the Pilot Falcon or whatever it may be, you just might not be able to come back. And like I think that Yoda 8-drop is one of my favorite units in the game. We played it a lot in our Hantu Green Force build, and versus the space aggro decks, once you get that out, the game's over. Right. Yeah. Again, you know what else? Maybe the Daughter might fit here, Kyle.
Yeah, I hadn't considered the Daughter. That's a good one to enable kind of racing. Although it's probably not as good in this deck because I'm using Vergence Temple. I can only get the Force once a turn.
That's true.
It's not like I can keep hitting base and get it back over and over.
Yeah, that's a good point. Fair. The more that we think about it, but I think this is going to be a really strong deck, especially early in the set. I do wonder, like you mentioned, the Figure of Unity, that might be like a 2 of or a 3 of if we're trying to do that racing strategy. And I think you get to the spot where you just like get to Yoda.
Yeah, it's really good on the Obi flip, right? Any of these, it's kind of like, you know, we talked about Talzin and slapping on the lightsaber. It makes her very, challenging to deal with. Well, you could flip Obi and either give him moral authority or Figure of Unity. Just sticking an upgrade to a leader unit is difficult to deal with. It makes the leader harder to remove and more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since there's no Rebels Fall now.
Well, especially when you could go like moral authority and Yoda's lightsaber, or Figure of Unity and Yoda's lightsaber, right? When you double suit him up, then all of a sudden he's just a total beater.
Yeah. This deck is honestly reminding me a lot of the Hantu Green Force builds. We played Protect the Pod a little bit back then as well with these huge butts. Some people on our team were running the Purgle King. You know, I think this is a really interesting take, and I love Eth Koth getting some love. Ezra, Maz. Maz is great on turn 2 depending on the matchup. Like, let's say you're in a mirror match and you don't have Consular or Consulaire, and they do. Maz enables you to kill something that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, right? And I really like that. I'm gonna be playing this deck a lot, and I know a lot of people on our team will be as well. And Obi's just, it's classic Obi, right? Like it's a cool leader that we've all kind of been itching to play, and I'm really excited to dive.
It's another deck you can run Galen into, and I like Galen.
Oh yeah, 100%. Any other things before we move on to the question and answer portion of the program?
No, fun deck. I've been enjoying it, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, we played it on midday matchup. I've been playing it a little online. I think it's just overall solid. This one's going to stick around.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess as we move on, one thing that I will say that I don't really like about this deck, Kyle, is that there's no room for credit generation where from our friends over at Premier Games, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but we got some great new credits available on premiergames.store right now. And they also sponsor this podcast, help us make these awesome coins, as well as outfit us with the best tokens in Swoosh. So you can go over to premiergames.store, check out the Old Republic credits. Does anybody have them on them right now, or are we going pure digital?
I do, and they are upstairs. Maybe I can go grab them here.
No, you can't. You'll be out of breath. You'll be out of breath.
Go watch Skeleton Crew again.
So this is how easy it is. In the time that Kyle, fakely offered to run upstairs, I went over to premiergames.store and checked out some of these metal tokens and accessories. I'm so excited for these credits, man.
These are awesome.
I just think like Austin Powers gold member. I love gold. I want all the gold. They come in 2 and 4 sets. You could buy the include card holder or the expansion tray. I'm more of an expansion tray kind of guy.
Yeah.
I like stacking them on top. And on top of that, Sharkey, did you know that you could save 10% off by just using Colorado Cantina Crew in the checkout on your whole order? And our man Marshall will ship them out ASAP. That's what he does.
I knew it.
You place an order, it just comes, like for us, we're spoiled because we're in Colorado, but next day air basically, right? So I love to see it, and I'm excited to make some clink clank noises as we get deeper.
And quote Skeleton Crew. You got to quote Skeleton Crew when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
All I ever see is Jod. Just Jod sitting there with all the credits, pouring down for him.
No spoilers. All right. So good stuff there. Big shout out to our friends over at Premier Games. All right. So one thing that I was thinking about here as we are getting deeper into us having a Discord and having an open Discord, before we were kind of, we were isolated. We had some friends in from the community, had our team, and we were kind of just all hanging out. One thing about us guys is that a lot of teams have like local centers where maybe there's like, for instance, the Bothans, our buddies there, they've got a lot of people in the Southeast, whether it's like Florida, Alabama, etc. For us, like a vast majority of us live within like 40 miles of each other, right? As we're growing and expanding, it's cool to see different perspectives. And one thing that you could always do in the Discord, if you join, just hit us up with some questions, message us. And this was a message that we got from one of our new members last week. And that was a really interesting conversation about ranking the past 6 sets as we're kind of like looking backwards on what Sue has been so far. Obviously, the highlight in the early game is Spark of Rebellion, bringing us in, you know, like getting us excited about the game. Shadows of the Galaxy, where Sabine really got all the tools she needed. That was like, I think, one of my favorite sets, right? Twilight to jump to light speed. So
I had some good leaders.
I guess what we'll do here, let's should we try to make a universal list or each do our own? What do you guys think?
I think we should work through one. I think we're gonna. I mean, there's a couple of them that are. Well, we'll see. I think a couple of them are not arguable. I think 1 and 6 are not arguable. It's the middle that we're gonna have to talk about.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's dive into it and see what we could come up with. So, Kyle, you feel like you have something to say, so why don't we say it?
Yeah, I mean, the best set, if we're talking about the 6 sets that have come so far, number 1 has to be Spark of the Rebellion, right? I mean, it started the game. It was so well designed. I mean, it just really sucked me into this game from day one, pulled me in. I just absolutely loved it. Now, there were a couple of mistakes. Boba Fett, right? Things that we learned about later, but just from an overall design, from a for me, from a feel perspective, when you're trying to embody what certain characters do and what certain aspects are supposed to be and how mechanics work, they really nailed the flavor. They really nailed the set. I mean, it was really an ideal set 1 to suck me into a game like this. I just thought it was awesome. Don't get me wrong. I've liked subsequent sets that they come out with, but to me, Spark is still just the gold standard. I mean, it's just amazing, right? And so I'll finish the thought. Unfortunately, they then followed it up with probably, well, I mean, it took 2 sets.
Hold on.
Go
okay.
ahead.
Let's pause there. Time out. Time is out. Did we have an argument against Spark being the best set?
I don't think so. That was going to be, like, it's my choice too. Is there anybody not choosing Spark number 1?
I could play devil's advocate. There were some things logistically that I didn't like about Spark. And you guys started playing a couple weeks before I did, or a couple months before I did. I started playing in June of that year. So it was really hard for me to get product. That was a little bit of a downer.
Fair argument, actually.
But
that's not the set's fault, though.
Hey. I'm winding up to make a point.
He's trying.
But what I would say here is that the thing that I don't think Spark, that any other set could argue with, is that the feeling that it gave us all, right? Kyle and I had been taking a really long break from TCGs, right? Like, we were both highly ranked when we were younger, me a lot younger because, and then we took like a 10, 20 year break, right? And this is the one that like brought us back, right? That like none of us were friends before this. None of us knew each other, right? Like nobody on the Cantina Crew knew each other. Some, rough acquaintances from like X-Wing or Destiny or something like that. So I would have to say, from a vibes perspective, from like an attendance perspective, from an overall card and excitement perspective, I have to say Spark. But I would say that for me, Legends of the Force is a close second in terms of the mechanics, the cards, the fun times had. The meta and the force throw of it all complicated it quite a bit. But if I had to make an argument for cards and sets that I was like very excited about, Legends of the Force would be the second for me.
I would agree, actually, because my second favorite is also Legends of the Force. There's an argument for me for Shadows of the Galaxy, and I'd also think on the same tier, Jump to Lightspeed belongs there. But I have no problem with calling Legends of the Force the second one for me, also because it's the first time really playing competitive limited, and so inside of its own set, it was very consistently fun as well. It's probably, I had more fun playing limited in Legends of the Force than I did in any other set. Most of the other sets are usually dominated by a leader or two or a strategy or two. Legends of the Force, while I had that to some extent, was a little bit less pronounced, and I thought was a lot more self-consistent, I think, for lack of a better term. And so I think those things for me also bump it slightly above the other ones I mentioned.
Yeah, I would also put Legends of the Force too, but really just because the Force mechanic, I think, was very well designed, very interesting in how you obtain, control the Force, how you have to use it, action sequence it to get what you want to do. If I'm going to go touchy-feely like Jordan did and say from a feelings perspective, it's also for us when we first got introduced to, some more of the competitive play that we really traveled for, right? So I associate Legend of the Force with competitive travel, because for the first few sets, we had store showdowns, we had smaller events. Legend of the Force is really what kind of kicked off some of the really competitive travel. I mean, there was some before that, but really when we started to do it a lot.
It was really JTL, right? Where we went to Seattle and then had sectors here. And then
Galactics
for Legends of the
after that,
Force, like you and I went to Philly, Vegas, obviously everything there. And also just like, I like a lot of aspects of Star Wars, right? I like the Acolyte, some awesome fight scenes, right? I like the skeleton crew. I like that elephant looking guy, Neil, very, very chill dude. I like a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, I want lightsabers. Right, I want Jedis. I want swinging lightsabers, as they say. I wanted the Grogers. I wanted the Kiatis. I wanted the Mace. So I think that set was kind of just like the play your hit set, right? Where you're like, hey, we want these characters. We grew up with these characters. Maybe Luke might be a different Luke and all these different things. But from that perspective, I really enjoyed it. I think Shadows of the Galaxy for me would be the only set that could compare. I tried to remove my own bias a little bit because of how much Sabine I played in that set, right? I think for me being like a Sabine main at that time, it was basically the perfect set for me, right? I think Sharkey, you and I played in the finals of like 3 showdowns.
Yep.
Right. I don't think there was a single showdown that set that I played that I didn't win. Like I loved it. Right. It was great. I really enjoyed it. But the game's not it wasn't as complex then as it is now. Right. So I think for me, that's where Legends of the Force gets the edge.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'd keep. Yeah. So Spark 1, Legends of the Force 2. I think we all agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Kyle?
And then I would position 3 being Shadows. I'm stealing Kyle's thunder here, but Shadows is what I would put as number 3. And I'm gonna lean into my bias here. I've been playing Cad Bane since he came out. I have no problem leaning into that. Generally speaking, of the Star Wars lore and fandom, I like the underworld stuff anyway, and that one really did a pretty good job of at least making it thematic. And it had enough power spikes in it to keep it interesting as well. It wasn't Spark or, in my opinion, Legends of the Force level, but it was still strong. You've still got hits that everyone's going to miss right now in Wrecker and Poe. You've got some leaders that everyone's going to miss, and that Django's in Twilight, never mind. It's some that no one will miss, but you've got a lot of, I thought, were cool mechanics. For a while there, Bosk was still around playing the bounty hunter thing.
Yeah.
My biggest complaint, actually, is that there was no real follow-up to most of those mechanics, but you can make that complaint about almost every set that exists.
Yeah.
So I'm generally pretty high on Shadows as well.
Finally, time to disagree, right? Of course,
Hey,
you
there we
like
go.
the set that Cad Bane came out of, right? So I'm not an Underworld guy. It's probably one of my least enjoyable aspects of Star Wars. I love all Star Wars, like Jordan does, right? So I won't say I'm going to hate on it. I just like it a little less, right? So for me, I think Jump to Lightspeed would be next.
Okay.
Jordan, I'm a Decipher guy. I played the old original Star Wars card game. In that card game, we had Gold Leader in his Y-Wing, right? There was this concept of piloting already existed from the onset of that set of that game, right? And so when they brought piloting to this game, I was very excited. That doesn't work quite the same. It was a little kind of tampered by the fact that we had things like Bamboozle and Confiscate that just kind of made them less powerful right away. That was a little bit of a bummer, but the whole concept of piloting, how it works, bringing it into the game, I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed making the space arena actually matter. Because up until then, you could kind of sneak wins against people from like a space angle, but it wasn't a core concept as much as it is, with Jump to Lightspeed and then since then. So I'd probably put JTL 3.
Okay. I mean, I could totally be convinced. I look back very fondly on JTL. I loved Django. I had such a good time playing Django. I think that the pilot mechanic is probably a little bit OP, but I like it, right? I think that cards like Chewie probably shouldn't exist. Like, that's not my favorite thing. I guess if we're trying to do a tiebreaker here, because I'm kind of neutral either way, do we think that if Django wasn't around in JTL, we all would have just had a better time in JTL? Or am I the weird one who just loved Django and think it made a good meta?
It definitely ruined the onset of that meta, right? It put a sour taste in my mouth. Our regional here, when we got our, SQ
Sectors,
or whatever, that was a bummer, right? So I don't want to blame the set. Kind of like in Spark, we made a mistake there with the leader, and FFG corrected it, right? So,
Sure.
Yeah. I think, over the longevity of the set, that got corrected, so it doesn't bother me as much. But definitely at the onset, it was a bit of a bummer.
Well, Sharky, do you have any flexibility in your ranking, or you firm Shadows?
I have JTL and Shadows almost equal, so like I can absolutely flex with that, and I know that my own bias puts Shadows ahead, but JTL probably as a whole was ruined by a leader that was not in JTL. So to be a little bit more fair to the set, it didn't cause the Django problem. Well, it exacerbated a Django problem. It didn't cause it. So
Yeah,
I think JTL could easily be the next one up there, and I think it would absolutely make sense. And I do think that from a power level going forward standpoint, it's going to be something that you have to contend with for the next year, because if you forget about space, you're going to get got.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be ready to get cheesed by Chewie. You have to be ready for Han to flip into a freaking Falcon and hit you for 1,500 damage because he has 2 sudden ferocities on all of a sudden. Like, there's things you need to at least be prepared for, so that you cannot just cheese your way to a ground sentinel fight. And I think that it is an important part of the metagame going forward.
yeah,
I think that can give it an edge.
So are we all on the same page if whatever is not 3 is 4?
Yeah, I'm good with that, because I
would
think the final 2 belong below both of those.
Yeah,
I agree.
Let's go JTL 3 and Shadows 4. Let us know in the comments if you guys disagree. I think that might be like the most contentious difference between general opinion and our thoughts. I know a lot of people are down on JTL overall from like some of the changes it made to the game. Let us know what you think in the comments. Number 5, I think just by process of elimination has to be Secrets of Power.
Yep.
I would agree, and I agree in the exact moment right now. And we're only talking about this moment, but I do think Secrets is going to be looked back on. Like, if we asked this a year later and ranked all 9 or whatever it is, I do think our Secrets of Power evaluation will increase. However, I think right now 5 is the right spot for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to look back fondly on a lot of things from this set, Secrets of Power, but there's one that I just wish was an evergreen mechanic. I think it's a perfect mechanic. I love it in every way, shape, or form. I think it should have been wider used, widely placed on anything, on when played, on this and that, and that's Disclose. I think it's such a fair additional cost you have to play. I would just imagine if Kellerin had to disclose 1 command, 1 heroic to play a unit as opposed to just getting it for free. I would really enjoy that. I don't know if I'm in the minority there, but I thought Disclose was just masterfully done.
It's a fantastic
good
balancing lever.
It's a good way to add a cost. Yeah, exactly right. So it's just, hey, you're going to get this thing if you can pay this additional resource. It also requires you just to think a lot more, right? Consider your resourcing, plan ahead, right? It rewards planning. So, I agree. I do like it very much. From a mechanics perspective, I don't think it's my favorite ever. You put it on a pretty high pedestal.
Oh, yeah,
I'd love to see I'd love to see the return of Smuggle myself, but that's
so.
I do like
just
it.
the other side though of Disclose is I actually like being on the side that can punish it, because you disclose something, I'm going to play Garinden and call it immediately.
And I think that's part of the fun of it, right? And it keeps it together. Where something that wasn't fun basically at all was Coordinate. When I say basically at all, there was I could think there's like 2 cards that consistently made use of Coordinate, and that is Plo Koon and the Shankshiner Shuttle.
Yeah.
Yeah, where there's some fringe use of like Kiadi, but it's not really.
Yeah, right. And when that's your argument for Twilight of the Republic, it's pretty dismal.
I have a better argument for Twilight, but that doesn't mean I want to put it above Secrets.
Okay, make the argument.
I think the one thing that Twilight did very well was another one of those sets where it was self-consistent. It's another one where you remove Anakin from the draft pool, and suddenly that set is amazingly fun in and of itself. Now, compared to the other sets that it was up against in both year 1 and year 2, the power level just wasn't there. Yeah. But generally speaking, I thought as a self-consistent and frankly cool mechanics thing, it was a cool idea. It just didn't quite get across the finish line from a polished standpoint, in my opinion.
Kyle?
Yeah, I just don't think we can. I have a hard time saying a lot of good things about Twilight of the Republic, right? At the time, we had really high hopes for, this was the 3rd set, and we were starting to see player population dwindle a little bit, at least in our area. I was very hopeful given the IP. I'm like, hey, a lot of people like this episode 1 through 3 stuff, Clone Wars, right? There's a lot of really cool characters. This is really going to be a home run, drive people into the stores. And then it was just such an underpowered, set, it was just such a bummer opening my boxes. You know, as you just open legendary after legendary, that is just coaster after coaster. It was just a bummer. So my whole memory of that set is just being bummed out. Now I'm glad we're not in that anymore. We've had a lot of positive things to look forward to, and I'm very excited for the upcoming set. A lot of lessons learned. But if we're ranking these sets, Twilight was just kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it's earned a spot in the last place, and I think us learning is all well and good, but I think FFG has shown, and they've published an article about it, which in reality means nothing. Right? Like, it's your actions after you publish it, and the actions that we have seen in the time that it takes to adjust. One thing that we always got to remember, or I would like you to remember, is that there's that delay time, right? Like, we make a choice today. Yep. Tomorrow we want to do the podcast completely different. The next time we do the podcast, we can change it. That's how quick we could react. FFG can't do that, and that's a fact of business and a fact of life. Just to recap, right now we have Spark in 1. We have Legends of the Force in 2, JTL in 3, Shadows of the Galaxy in 4, Secrets of Power in 5, and Twilight in the Republic of 6. Let us know in the comments if we're different than you guys or what your rankings would be. And I think in the spirit of positivity, let's end the podcast here with each of us saying one nice thing about Twilight of the Republic. We'll let Sharkey go first, because I know what he's going to say. Sharkey, the floor is yours.
The one nice thing about Twilight is that Django got banned. Joke about that. However, I do think that they made some cool attempts at mechanics. I do think Coordinate could have been cool if it was slightly more powerful. I do like the idea, and I'm a big fan of trying things that don't always have an immediate or obvious payoff. So I think they did a good job, and I appreciate that they did.
I thought you were going to say Cad Bane.
Cad Bane, the unit.
Yeah, the hostage taker.
Very good unit, but yeah.
All right, Kyle.
I thought exactly the same thing. All right, I guess if I'd say one nice thing, it will be Quinlan Vos, right? I didn't really know who Quinlan was when this set came out. I thought, that's a cool looking lightsaber, right? It encouraged me to read the book, to learn more about his character, to dive into more of the lore generally. So for me, it was kind of just trying to learn some of these characters. I'm an old fart. I like episode 1, 2, 3. When this set came out, I was not a Clone Wars guy. So I read that book. I watched Clone Wars. I got to learn a lot more about Star Wars because I wanted to understand the lore and the characters that this set was built on. So for me, I thought that was positive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you took mine. I love that Dark Disciple book. I really recommend it.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
I'm pretty nerdy, and I rate all of the books that I read, and I have them in the system. Very few 5-star ratings have been given out by me. 5 stars for Disciple of Darkness, I believe it's called. A great story of action, love, disciples, and darkness. A lot of good stuff going on. I will say, though, I guess if I have to think on the spot here, is that
you can take Cad Bane.
No, yeah, you got it. I didn't like Cad Bane. Cad Bane wasn't good. See, that's a story for another podcast. But for me, I think my favorite character in Star Wars is Yoda. So I was really excited to get a Yoda leader. In the moment, it wasn't that good, right? Like, I remember trying to make what I called it, like the gangster Yoda, right? Yellow underworld Yoda in Twilight. It wasn't that good. Spoiler alert. But we did see Yoda finally get its time in the spotlight. I'm happy it did prior to rotation. I know a lot of people don't like the showcase, but it's one of my favorite showcases. I have like a misprinted one from our buddy Ryan Masters, and I cherish it, and I'm happy that I have it. It's probably one that I just know I'll never get rid of, like that and my Italian Sabine. But outside of that, I can't think of anything nice to say because Kyle took my thunder with Quinlan Vos. So shout out Quinlan, shout out
I didn't know people didn't like the Yoda showcase.
Yeah, people think he looks weird.
Yeah,
I like it
at all.
Yeah, I think it looks cool.
I'm an episode 1, 2, 3 hater. I don't even like him with a lightsaber.
Yeah, you also thought that the way that he fights is silly, which is crazy.
You're just old, man. Don't worry about it.
Yoda's cool. All right, let me know if you guys agree with Yoda being cool or not. All right, that's all we got for the podcast. Big shout out to Mirror Games. Big shout out to you for supporting us here on the channel. Subscribe and join our Discord so you could be a member of the next Cantina Q&A. Until next time, guys. Oh, wait. Big midday matchup this weekend coming up. What's going on Friday?
Oh yeah. So I really want to get new leaders on the board. I'm trying to get all my proxies printed. Sometimes that's harder than it sounds, but we're gonna go for Jin, the new Jin Red deck that we covered
cool.
like a week ago. If I can get all those printed out, and then since we did hit up Premier Games so much, I do have my new gold tokens, and I want them on the table. So we're gonna try and play some Jabba because that's gonna guarantee us some tokens, right? So probably some new Jabba Green versus some Jin Red. I think.
I love it. Clang clang. You should tune into the stream just for the tokens, right? Everything else after it, that shine is just so bright. It's hard to compete. So shout out to all you guys. Until next time, guys. I'm Jordan for Kyle and Sharkey. Stay tuned, stick with us, and we'll see you next time.